say too much because the speakers we've got here will have a lot to say about the awards. Hackney Design Awards happen every 2 years. This is the first time we've had an event that the Hackney Society have held an event to really sort of showcase what's happening in Hackney. Often the Design Awards can it's a lot of work for Matt, but it zips past and you miss it and never manage to see what amazing stuff is happening in Hackney. So this is a really good opportunity, and it's given me a good opportunity to have a dig into those projects as well. I've been chairing the planning group for Hackney Society for about 10 years. So we've seen all these projects come through, and we've commented on a lot of the projects, and we might be a little bit shamefaced about some of the things we've said about some of the projects. So I actually pulled out some of our old comments as well from, these projects are sometimes 5 years, even 10 years in the making from conception. So it's a wonderful moment to sort of, I suppose, celebrate them coming into reality, being released into the world and having a life beyond all the complications of trying to get things built. So I will pass over firstly to Matt Payne, who we should all know. He is a long-standing deputy manager of the Conservation, Urban Design and Sustainability team.
Or CUDS for short.
Or CUDS, as we. So I had to remind myself what that stood for. So I've written it down. So Matt's going to talk. Matt, how many years have you been organising these awards now?
I've been organising them since 2018.
Okay.
But I've been at Hackney since 2005, so I've known about them for a long time.
Yeah, it does feel like you must have been attached in some way for a long period of time. So Matt's going to talk about the background of the awards, the judging criteria for the awards, and then run through some past winners and highlights. And then we have two of the jury members here this evening. Owen Watson, not Wilson, of 6A Architects, who are a highly regarded multi-award winning practice, is going to talk about the process of judging and how they came about with the shortlisting and evaluation of the projects that they ultimately chose. And then Hannah Parham, who is a conservation expert, works for Historic England, was also on the panel, on the jury for these awards, and was quite a few years ago now a member of the planning group, and we did coincide briefly. So Hannah's going to talk about 2024 heritage nominees and heritage at risk removals, which is an interesting subject. So handing over to Matt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to this presentation about 20 years of great design in Hackney. I'm hoping the tech is going to work. There we go. So Lisa, you've covered some of this, but obviously I'm Matt Payne, deputy manager of the CUDS team. I'm going to be talking a little bit about the background of the awards, the criteria, and then hand it over to Owen, and then lastly, Hannah to talk about the heritage nominees in 2024 and also the heritage removals. And I've got photos on every slide as we go through. So Hackney Empire restoration was actually from the first year, which was 2004. So a bit about me. So I started at Hackney in 2005. My 20-year work anniversary is coming up shortly. My background's in planning and urban design, but I've been involved in a lot of heritage work at Hackney over the years. Some of you here will probably remember the Love Local Landmarks project, jointly with English Heritage at the time and Hackney Society. That was back in 2012. And I've also written appraisals for Shacklewell Green and Welsh Street back in 2000. So I was first involved with the Design Awards back in 2006. I actually appear in the 2006 brochure, which everyone can have a look at. These aren't to be taken away, but you're welcome to have a look. And I jointly organised the 2016 awards with my former manager, Rodney Kegg. And then I've been the lead Hackney Design Awards project manager for 2018 to today. And then we've got the Nile Street winner from 2006. Right. So background, obviously it's 20 years anniversary. So we first started in 2004. Run every 2 years, and the awards celebrate the best in design in the built environment and also the public realm. So the idea when our project team at the time started it was obviously to promote good design across Hackney. Our design review panel came in a couple of years later, so we've got all these things that try and celebrate and promote good design in Hackney. And the thing about the Hackney Design Awards is it's open to everyone. We encourage anyone to nominate. It's always been free to enter. It's a very straightforward process entering, quite a few photos, descriptions and drawings. And yeah, big and small schemes. So we've had towers, big housing developments and rear extensions. They're all welcome in Hackney Design. And then just a few facts there. So since 2004, 400 nominations, 162 shortlisted schemes, and we've given out 95 awards, commendations, or special mentions. Tends to just be awards and commendations now. The early years were we had special mentions as well. Okay, so I've got a few facts and figures about the design awards over the years, and I'm going to pair it with the brochures which I've got, the one-off brochures that I've got from each year up until today. So 2004 was grassroots, first one. We had 6 judges and we had 6 winning schemes, and we had no brochure. That's all I could find. That's on the website and that's a printout. So early days. 2006 brochure, but starting to get a bit more snazzy now. We had our largest judging panel, which was 8 judges. Probably a few too many. We had 6 this year, didn't we?
Yeah.
And over the years after that, 6 became a sort of comfortable figure. So we had a very large judging panel. 2008, a brochure change. Someone else designing that one. And we had, so this year we had design champion, councillor, I think it was Darren Parker. And I think it was the only year that we had a design champion. I'm not too sure what happened to that role, but obviously we now have our heritage champion, who's here tonight, Councillor Suza Lunga. So that's great. Obviously we've got our heritage champion, but it's just an interesting thing to note that we did have a design champion back in 2008. In 2010, that brochure, another new brochure, A4, now say. We had our first Hackney Society judge, and that was Lisa Rick. Is she still a member of the Hackney Society? She's not here. Yeah? Okay, so Lisa was our first Hackney Society judge. And then 2012, we're going to get lost with the brochures now. Yeah, 2012, another brochure design. So probably a different person designing this each time. We introduced the People's Choice Awards, which lets anyone in the borough, you don't have to be in the borough, but it's encouraging residents and people who are interested in that design awards and want to engage to vote for their favourite scheme from the shortlist. That goes back to 2012. We had our first English Heritage judge. It was English Heritage at the time, and that was Nigel Barker, Dr. Nigel Barker.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's still around.
He is.
Yeah,
Yes.
still working for English Heritage.
He isn't.
Yeah.
He is still around.
And the Hackney Marshes Sports Centre on the right there, Design Award winner. And then 2014, we changed to our, probably some of you are familiar with this, but this is our brochure. This is our brochure design now, our new format. So this is the one that seems to stick. And we had a returning judge. The only time I could see that we had the same judge on a Hackney Design Awards panel, and that was Nigel Barker again. So he did such a good job. He was invited back to the 2014 awards. 2016, we had our second Hackney Society judge. Do
Another Lisa.
you know who that was?
Yeah, another Lisa.
That was
Yes.
another Lisa. So yeah, so that was a good year. 2018, my fact about 2018. Sorry, that was the brochure. 2018, we had the Hackney Town Hall restoration. Obviously, it was a really great thing, many years in making. Hawkins Brown Architects did a fantastic job. That didn't win a Heritage Award because we didn't have a Heritage Award then. So it was a Design Award winner, but it would have been the biggest heritage project that year. On to 2020, quite a big brochure, the virtual awards. So obviously during the pandemic, there was couldn't meet in person, so everything was done virtually. So the shortlisting was virtual. There were no visits. It was all just done based on photos. And I think that's why there's quite a lot of schemes, because there was a lot came in, and there was a lot of winners given out that year. And then just on 2022 up to here, we had Historic England representation. 2020 our Heritage Award came in as well, and also our Climate Change and Sustainability Award. And then in 2022, as part of having that Heritage Award, we have a Heritage Lead each year from Historic England. So that was Alex Bowring in 22, and obviously Hannah, bringing us up to 2020. It's almost recent. Okay, so just going to talk a little bit about the judging criteria, and Owen, obviously you'll probably touch on this for the 2024 nominees. We've had this criteria, I think, since about 2020. So we always had something, but this is when we kind of refined it a little bit, and especially brought in the focus with climate resilience. So I won't read that all out, if you've got that there, but so quality, contextual response, innovation in terms of design, construction, and then climate resilience. So this is for all awards, not just the buildings that get a climate change and sustainability award. We're looking for buildings that promote climate resilience across all of the awards. And that's the Floating Church, which I think was a nominee in 2020, quite an unusual one over in the Olympic Park. So as I say, since 2020, we've had the Heritage and Restoration Awards for sensitive and sympathetic restorations, buildings or extensions. And we have our Heritage Lead each year from Historic England, who guides us on that and influences the shortlisting and who gets the winning award. So on the right there, you've got the St John at Hackney Church, our Heritage winner for 2024. Climate Change and Sustainability Awards. So again, since 2020, we've had this award showcasing innovative, low carbon exemplar design, and I've just included the 2024 winner there, which is the black and white building. And we're also joined by our sustainability judge here, who we'll say hello to. And finally, the People's Choice Awards. We're in the People's Choice Award winner, been running since 2010. And as I said earlier, offers residents the chance to vote for their winner. So we had, I think, over 700 votes, 44% of the vote. Pretty good portion of the vote. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up my part by just going through some highlights over the years. So these are kind of general highlights. You've got the Writer's Shed, which was a really interesting, obviously as the name implies, it was for a writer in the back garden, an outbuilding. That was a real favourite. I think that was back in 2016. This one's Leonard's Circus Shared Space. I wanted to include that one because earlier on I touched on new buildings in Hackney and public realm, and we see less public realm nominees coming. But when we do, they do get awards. And I think that space has been quite successful. Over on the top right, you've got King's Crescent Estate. Lots of obviously new housing, affordable homes for Hackney, including obviously private homes and affordable housing. This is Lansdowne Drive. Lisa, this is Bernard's scheme, isn't it?
Tectonics Architects.
First passive house in Hackney,
or that's right. Yeah. Was a first certified. Yeah.
First certified, yeah. Okay, so that was a good one. Don't know the year. I can check my notes. And that's that. People's Choice winner, I think, in 2012
was
16. There you go. Okay.
Both of those.
I should just be reading my notes. I've missed probably loads of stuff. But anyway, Woodbury Wetlands was, I think, the People's Choice Award winner. Obviously, quite an unusual one and a really great space. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. And again, nice to have a kind of open space award element rather than just buildings. Buildings are great as well. This one is Taylor, Chatto and Wilmot Court. I think it was 2022. Tanya Leisure Centre. Didn't win the design award, it got a commendation. which was a little bit controversial, and then it went on to win lots of other design awards. But it got a design award commendation. And then the last one I wanted to include was 16 Chart Street, which won a design award, maybe a sustainability commendation, I can't remember, but it's won a design award, and they were also very kindly our hosts for our award ceremony. So just wanted to give them a shout out. And then lastly, I've got some historical highlights over the years. Hannah's going to be talking about the nominees 2024, so I'm not going to stray into that territory. But just some historical highlights over the years: the Hackney Empire restoration back in 2004, Haggerston School refurb. I haven't got the year, possibly 2008, I think. Around that time as well, you've got the tram shed and the Damien Hirst artwork in Shoreditch. I've not been in that space personally. I don't think that artwork's there anymore. So. It's not there anymore. Okay. Well, there's what it used to look like. 2022 Museum of the Home. That's obviously was a great space. Obviously, quite difficult to move around, and it's been vastly improved. And then we've got the Springfield Park restoration, which I think was 22 as well. 2020 was the St Mary's Centre in St Newington. So I've not actually been to that space, but that was a new centre attached to the church. And then I said I wasn't going to stray into yours, but I've got the St John at Hackney Church for 2024 to bring us right up to the end. So I think that's my last slide. So now I'm going to hand over to Owen from 6A Architects and our chair for 2024.
Shall I stand up?
Shall I move over?
Hi everyone, thanks for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here and stuff like this. Yeah, I'm Owen Watson. I'm an architect. I'm a director at 6A Architects, and this year it was a chair of the judging panel for the run through of exceptional projects over the years, and really the diversity and amazing amount of projects in Hackney makes being a judge really difficult, actually, and really exciting and fulfilling. So I've been asked to talk a little bit about the process of how we went about judging with my fellow judges. There were 6 judges invited this year, of which 2 were also specialist judges, so, on heritage, and Sarah on environment and sustainability. And we started the process with a shortlisting exercise. So we arrived without knowing anyone else on the jury to the Hackney Town Hall, and very suitably into an oak-panelled, beautiful room in the Town Hall where Matt and team had prepared handouts with all of the long-listed nominations. So I think we then had an extremely tough task of getting that number from about 33 down to 16, or less than 16. Probably what we could do in a day. I think we had 12. 12. We got to, yeah. So how many we could eventually see in a day, but you'll see. The real difficulty, I think, and this, I've been a Hackney resident for 10 years. I love this diversity, the creativity in the borough, but it also reflects in the entries we had that they were so full of diversity. How can you possibly compare a park to a portico, a council housing scheme to very small residential extensions? I think this is the real interesting part of an assessment procedure. Of course, we have the criteria, but then as the chair, I think it's also my role to try to encourage really open discussion about the difference and the values that we all hold as different members of the judging panel, and actually to make a space that's also very comfortable for the other jurors to say their experience, to speak about what they really thought about the works in front of us. And so we started going around the group and just basically asking very simple questions. Firstly, what jumps out at you as being really excellent? What can we all agree on that is just fantastic projects? Okay, put them to one side. And then the next question was, okay, what is really unusual? What do you sort of look at, don't understand, and you need to actually want to delve more into it and find out a little bit more? Maybe, for instance, an NHS practice with a Greek revival portico. And also we started asking questions of each other about what are these projects for and who are they for? And I think that was a very valid question that sort of spun a lot of commentary around what is the purpose of these, and also what connections are these buildings trying to make to Hackney, to history, to contemporary architectural discourse, to communities. And I think in a way also this year we wanted to really dig deep into what are the social and environmental issues. Perhaps that is more of a focus away from an architecture which is about architecture as objects. And I think in a way also reflects maybe current understanding when materials and finances are very finite, that we acting as architects, clients acting, we all have to act, make the impact work across multiple levels rather than just a pure object base. I think that's something that the profession and the sector is really considering very deeply. So then after that we reconvened. When we got down to about 12, we reconvened a few weeks later for site visits to go and see the building. And we travelled across the borough in a silver minibus, very glamorous, packed full of M&S treats in case we needed some energy. And it was actually an amazing and exhausting day of going to see the incredible projects, and also to meet each time the architect and the client who would tell us a little bit about it. And actually meeting them, I think, was one of the most extremely touching way to experience the building, extremely personal way, because these are the people who embarked on what is a very brave journey into the unknown, into finding funding, into taking all these risks. And they were also really willing to then tell you how transformative these projects have been, their worlds to people who were using. And yeah, really, that was really a huge privilege for I felt in particular. Even I think the smallest buildings had some of the biggest things to talk about. If you look in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen is one of our winners, which was the house built by many hands, which was the smallest project on the shortlist. It was a residential house extension, but it was dealing with these really big issues of climate change and innovation. In fact, the project had low carbon concrete slab throughout it. And this was a concrete that was made from fired clay rather than fired limestone. So it had about 50% less carbon emissions than a concrete slab would. It wasn't just the first use of it in Hackney, actually the first use of it in the country. So this tiny project really pushing boundaries of knowledge. It also had sustainable hardwood, which is normally window joinery and door joinery, but they actually managed to use superstructure and had a special dispensation strata to use this. And then finally, the walls were made of a mix of lime and hemp, packed by hand, ground by the architects, by the clients, and by both the architects and the clients' friends who all came around. And that was the house built by many hands. And I think projects like that, which are really small, but really prototypical and really experimental, they actually become these models for us to reuse at bigger scale. They could really change the narrative, and they could change the emission levels of residents. So really, really striking. It was also a day, personally for me, and I think for the other jurors, of a lot of archy geeking. So we filled up a lot of our iPhones, I think, with pictures of balustrades, of door handles, of really nice junctions, these kind of things that architects adore, maybe. And I'm sure the other jurors have similar pictures to mine up here. So cobbles of charging walk, or these inlaid mosaics, our court. So it was, I really think, essential process to visit the buildings, not just for the archy geeking, but actually to experience the buildings, to see what how they feel, how the materials come together, and the spatial sequences and the landscapes. How do they all add? How do they connect and do these things? Sort of, I suppose beyond saying something, what are they trying to express? How do they make us feel? And I distinctly remember when we came here, there was a lot of smiles from the jury, and even we had two jurors skipping back to the minibus as they came outside of the building. And I actually checked my notes for what I wrote on the day about this building. I said, left feeling airy and happy, energizing, public project done well. And I really think that's sort of the beauty of the Hackney Design Awards, actually, that this whole process highlights the best buildings in the borough, but ones that really contribute to the community, that are innovating, hopefully that are making a mark. And they're they are extremely well designed pieces of architecture, but they also stand for something. It stands for a better, more generous, more equitable, and more enjoyable society, and a real privilege to be part of that process.
Hannah, do you the heritage nominees.
And before I start talking about Abney Park, just to touch on one of the themes, it's interesting hearing Owen articulate our process of judging the design awards and how many of the principles that those of us who work in heritage conservation have now become totally mainstream within the work of architectural practice. What a wonderful thing that is. I started my career 20 years ago. I felt like a battle between us conservationists and you guys, the architects. And I know there are lots of architects here and we were talking completely different languages. But I think that we've come closer together over the time that I've been involved in heritage conservation, that the heritage conservation world is really open to the new generation that comes fresh, bright new design. And I think that the architecture world is community orientated, sustainable processes of the conservation approach that I've practiced throughout my career. And this design awards, I think, like others in Hackney, show that process going on. I think Hackney is actually one of the places where borough have lit away, and to see that come through in the way that we as judges discuss things. We were all broadly speaking the same language. The old battles from the turn of the century, much before that I've heard about only in legend. So Abney Park restoration project, I'm sure this is a really well-known place to everyone here, Hackney resident. And Abney Park is one of the magnificent 7 cemeteries that bring London, interestingly all built as private enterprises, sustained by selling graves. That really, in a way, was their demise, of course, because there's only so many times you do that before you run out of space. The economic model collapses. Lots of them went into local authority leadership in the 1970s, and lots very, very badly. I'm starting way back here, in the 1960s and 70s, and almost every conservation repair project begins decades ago because they do take an awfully long time to come to Abney Park. Those of you here who've been involved in conservation in Hackney for decades probably know the people who first started to care about this on a voluntary basis at the weekend, clearing gravestones, starting to learn and discover about the place. And then I think the council probably quite late in the day to coming into the picture, but having taken responsibility for the asset, I think the Hackney Council project that they built, the funding that they bought from the Heritage Lottery Fund, the architects that they commissioned here, both for the repair of the chapel, which has gone from being an absolute liability, a great big public park with a falling down Victorian building, to an incredible public asset, not only because it's a space that we can use, but hopefully also revenue through events that will care for the rest of Cemetery Park. Far less intimidating visit, I think, because the award is also for the classical buildings, the Gothic building in the centre, the classical buildings, all of the same, on the gate lodges. Cafe that's provided there. And oh, I'll do that. I can do it myself. Yeah.
There you go.
This is a really interesting one because it's not an obvious sort of heritage project at first glance. Did they put themselves forward for conservation? We decide that they ought
I think they put themselves
They put
forward, and
themselves
then we
forward
were
for it.
kind of happy that it was
And
in
we were
that
really
category.
happy that they did. Yeah, this is a 1970s house. It's built as a social housing. Yeah. And obviously under right to buy has now become privately owned. The architect's response the 1970s heritage was exactly that of as if it were a listed building. You understand the significance of the original structure, of the design, you reflect what works about it, and what's negative, and then you take that forward, designing in that idiom piece of life.
Can you tell us where that building is?
Good question. I arrived in a minibus, so I was completely disoriented.
It's in
at this point.
Homerton, and I can, yeah. I'm not
It was
sure
a very
if it-
strange day. We
Very
saw
close to Homerton
12
Station.
things at once. I have no idea where I was.
Haslett Road.
Hassett Road.
Hassett.
yeah.
Hassett
Oh
Road,
yeah,
sorry,
there it
Enoch.
is. It's over towards Oriel Road. Yeah, on the way over, to Mabley Green. Yeah, near Homerton Station. Yeah, really beautiful inside, and obviously with that conservation approach you're saying, buildings, so let's work with that style. Beautiful furniture as well, didn't they have a specific collection? Yeah. So here we are in the Portico. This is a sort of double whammy, because not only is a building being saved, and that's the thing about heritage buildings, if you don't do anything about them, it's not like the impact is neutral. If you don't do anything about them, you've got a rotting or disused. So you lose the potential for building it could be, and you lose because it's subject to vandalism that gets everyone depressed. Here, we've taken away that threat, we've lost that sense of redundancy because this building was originally attempted as a revival technology, information technology, girls' school. So that was where the computer was kept. And obviously, that's just become a slightly redundant use. No one has a sort of information computer school anymore. So we had this sort of redundant building. No longer have that. What instead we have, in this second bit of the bonus, the benefit of this project is it has a landmark presence. The old Lower Clapton Road swings round by Hackney Baths, post-war. Not a particularly strong street presence, not a function setting. The landscaping here really impressed. The doctor said, I can hear birds outside my room now. Planting, and the way that the new building, which sits here, creates this courtyard, which is beautiful. Walk along here, you'll sort of see as the windows open, the rhythm of the columns in this colonnade. So it's really subtly responsive to the heritage. It felt really a very subtle response, not an icon. The building already had an icon. The architects just lifted it and gave it. And then the winner, I think because of its really strong landmark status, about where Hackney started. It started in what's left is St Augustine's Tower, this St John at Hackney. With spiritual identity and heritage sense, a bit wider than just the Anglican vision. Probably the biggest place to worship. It was always in use. So it's been back from the brink, but it was very, very serious. Certainly wasn't used maximum of its capacity. And the scheme here by good architects was transformational. There have been some losses in the changes to the building, elements of phase and character is very different. It feels very clean and modern inside now, but it has been utterly transformational on how we perceive what how perceived and with all the audiovisual services, bar and these, everything will need to design way. There is an icon, it probably is this one, but it's and yeah, again, a landmark of what we could do. Hope that other places over 900 churches on the heritage register. Well, that's one off, but a long way to go. So, just to touch briefly on the Heritage at Risk Register, which is Historic England's way of understanding our priorities as an organisation, but also the sector's priorities for the buildings that we should focus on. In London, we're lucky in that Grade 2 buildings are eligible for a number of buildings. So, Hackney has a number of the big offs, the ones that came off the register last year and were celebrated in the press and the station promoted this very strongly for Abney Park Cemetery and the Portico. Abney Park, I think, is the first time that a cemetery in London not doing great. Luckily, West Norwood is on the way to be Kensal Green. I've had a colleague describe it as the open wound in the heritage sector. It's in such a state of disrepair, really in a lot of trouble, and the local authorities there aren't interested. That was a really big moment to celebrate Abney Park. Give with one hand, you take away with the other. Stoke Newington Town Hall, unfortunately, on the heritage list. That's something to of interest. We know that the local authority is brilliant at other challenges within the borough will take very seriously those town hall. And there are, of course, on the heritage restriction, long-standing and problematic headaches, should we call them, and the disinfecting station, Hillfields, which is a great building, and Haggerston Baths, long running saga there. I don't have an update on those things, but my colleagues are working really hard with Hackney Council. Any other I'd like to add that in that endeavour, unlike almost any other political Hackney, the Hackney Society has I'm not sure it has, but it's not common in boroughs for the voluntary sector organisation considering heritage. That's absolutely brilliant testimony to Hackney Society and Hackney Council. But I don't know if Janet you want to say a little bit about what that group is planning. But, yeah.
Well, I mean, or Julia can. Would you like to say something about the group?
Do have so we're hoping. I think to your workload.
Well, but mostly it's about getting it off there. Local groups shouldn't focus on unlisted buildings on your street. I
think having the group also, it means we are sort of shining a light a bit more on, or we're more alert to things of great interest that might be lost through development or neglect, what have you. And certainly within the planning group, because of the presence of the buildings at risk group, which I'm not part of, but I'm watching very closely, we are looking out to report back any little fragments that we think are kind of some interest, that absolutely wouldn't have a chance of being, a listed asset, but for Hackney are important. So we're on alert, and I think it's important to keep an eye open for these things.
Definitely. I mean, so even like the cinema figure.
That's been a long issue. It's highly unlikely to be a building, but it's really, really valuable.
Yeah.
And planning applications do more and more demand more detailed sort of research as part of submissions. So we find out more about buildings through looking at the planning applications as well, which we're able to then report back.
Segued into the panel discussion.
Yes,
It's probably about right, isn't it? So I'm going to sit down
come
again.
and sit back there. Can I have a time check? Because I've come here as chair without a watch. Okay, great. That was great to hear about your experiences. Such a good year, such a good spread of buildings, interesting spread of buildings. I wanted to put a question to Matt first about I think it's a very difficult time at the moment for construction. Coming out post 2020, these awards have picked up stuff that was in the pipeline that we know people struggled to deliver, but they got there. How do you feel about the next 2 years possible
Are we going to have enough
spread?
nominations?
Yes, because it's quiet in
I
town.
mean, we do worry about that. I mean, I think even, 2020, 2022, we were kind of a bit worried we'd get enough nominations, but we always get quite a few. I mean, we had 32, I think, this year. I mean, it goes up and down, but I mean...
Is that fairly average then? 32%?
Yeah, I think 2020 we had quite a lot.
Okay.
But 2022 is similar, sort of around 30 marks. We tend to have that sort of figure in each time, and we do a bit of delving and invite people to nominate, and we try and push it up. So we try and get as many nominations in as we can. If we had less, we'll just obviously have a smaller shortlist and less winners. I don't think the idea is that it'd be shelved or anything like that.
But sometimes these tricky times as well, with construction being as expensive as it is, and the whole process of getting things. I'm struggling at the moment, I have to say, getting things built. It does provoke more imaginative sort of responses as well. So
and maybe we'll see smaller schemes, more extensions.
I mean, the house built with many hands is a really, really lovely example. That really delightful, which I'd love to visit. Yeah. So we may just see things slightly off the sort of larger scale. Developments. Yeah. I was. We will ask the floor for some questions, but I just also wanted to ask to what extent, when you visited the buildings, did the debate continue? I mean, you obviously had debate. It was very interesting to hear how you managed that first process, because you had 30 odd schemes. You hadn't looked at them before at all,
Not when
and you hadn't met each other, and that's quite a difficult thing to kind of put in motion, that a sort of easy conversation and filtering of those projects. When you came to visit them, did any of the visits really trigger a further debate? Was there?
Not in front of the clients in the afternoon.
No.
Yes.
No. Definitely on the minibus, there was a lot of discussion about what were the possibilities. I think a lot of them completely overturned our expectations. Normally in a very good way. That actually, and that's why I stressed going to see things and just experiencing them gives you so much more than what lands on paper.
Yeah. As I say to my clients always, the reality will be so much better. Please, then the world is so much more interesting and exciting than actually a pile of drawings and photographs.
So I didn't really mention it, but we also had a deliberation over dinner at the end of the day. So that was when we could sit down with a meal. Halloween party below us, so it was a bit of a noisy environment, but we were that was when we really could thresh them out about which things went up and which things went down, maybe in your opinion.
And you finalised on that day, did you? You were
Yes.
able to, yeah. Are there any questions or comments, observations?
I'll ask a provocative question.
Okay.
You've had a lot of big heritage lottery funded schemes in your presentation, Matt, including Hackney Empire and Abney Park and St John's and the Museum of Home and Springfield Park. I'm just interested to know whether there are any turkeys that you've come across over the years, big schemes that you think
Heritage
haven't come off.
turkeys, or generally heritage ones, or
Well, you can take it as widely as you wish. I'm curious.
I think the only thing I'll say is we've had People's Choice winners that were a bit dubious. Not this one. I hasten to add. I'll let you look at the website. But we've had some discussions about how to make the People's Choice fairer, because it tends to just be who shares the email around the most and that sort of thing, rather than it being is it the best building for the people.
I'm amazed at this practice that I was solicited to vote for this. I didn't, because I thought there were so many great entries. I didn't, but obviously a lot of people did.
Possibly goes on slightly more upbeat way of saying that. Though. So have you had a chance to reflect on some of the past winners and whether the outcome was what you expected, or different, or better, or worse, or just generally what then happens in 20 years of being out there?
That's a good question. A reflection.
Yeah.
A sort of 20
Maybe
years
it's something
on.
to bring into
revisit.
the 2026 awards.
Yeah.
Lifetime achievement.
Like the Booker
award.
of yeah. Or in I think in the Architectural Review, is in one of the journals. There's a revisit 20 years on of projects that have been published and how they've fared and what the life of them is, and that's a really lovely or important thing to do.
I mean, I do think they really push the needle, particularly on contemporary design. I would say, I didn't say it, but we won an award in 2018 for an apartment building in Bristol Park called Blackstone Building.
Yeah.
And I remember when we started the project, which was in Evan, I'm going to drop in one of your colleagues, but the planning officer at the time said, "You will never build a modern building on this site." And I sort of okay, whatever, complexity. But then by the time we realized the building, which was an awful long time, we then won a design award. And I just felt like one that really pushed the needle. I think for us it was great. For the client, it was wonderful achievement.
Which
This Blackstone building, dark apartment building.
Finsbury Park.
Finsbury Park.
Yeah.
But I really think it changes opinions about what is possible and it's suitable and appropriate and what's contemporary design mean inside planning and within communities. And I do think it has a lasting legacy.
And to what extent did it take a huge amount of patience and tolerance and resilience to kind of persevere with that? Would you put that down to your client, your approach?
Yes.
I mean, it's rare that is able to come about, really.
It took a lot in multiple directions. I think the first thing, it took a lot of time. And that generally kills schemes because if it is a commercial proposition, time really does cost a piece. I think the client was an extraordinary individual who also owned the deli and lived above the deli, and so she was there to basically build a community around food and the building. And actually, when we did enter in, it's all from pre-app commentary, when we did enter into planning, and it was actually, we really had a strong legs. But I think just took its time.
And that's the thing to recognise is the importance of the client. I mean, projects aren't invented by architects generally. If you get the right client and the right brief, and get the support, you're pretty well set up to deliver, really. And often, I think in the RIBA awards, there's a client award, isn't there? Yeah. Which is a possible nice sort of touch to just. Okay, should we have the one at the back? Is that, yep. It's a great question, and no, we don't have the luxury of that as judges because we're looking at stuff and we have to make decisions right then. I think though the approach that we're taking is, and this comes through in some of the principles and how we approach is that kind of loose fit. Can we see this being sustained and being good in whatever happens next? Because it's impossible, really, and architects are in a difficult position. They're expected to deliver a building for a society that they don't yet know is coming into existence. But those principles of high quality fixtures and fittings that are durable and that are going to last and always give pleasure, spaces like this one, which is a waiting room by day and a lecture theatre by night. Those are the sort of qualities that we can hope are going to help and create beautiful spaces to be in, whatever people are doing in those spaces. Also things like sustainability, accessibility, which here again, you think that steps going up to a Greek temple, it was impossible to work out accessibility, but they've got that ramp going up. And they've just celebrated it. They said, you know what, let's just be a ramp and put some flowers on it. And that's another longevity. That's really important. Were you able to visit many of the projects in their full use? You know,
yes,
we did. Yeah, you can see the houses they've been lived in for a while. In many cases, this was a fully functioning doctor service. Abney Park was the cafe was full. We knew that weddings had been taking place. We could see some of the snags, and people were really candid about it. We did our best. But yeah, no, you're right. The feedback loop in architecture is, arguably I'm dealing in historic England with the failed architecture of the 1900s, but it's where it is beautiful and durable and has commanded the affection of people, they will make it work, and those things are really.
I think you do go around the site visits with your antennas up to try to take as much, anecdotal information as you can at the time. I remember when we visited here, we were upstairs with one of the doctors who was saying that what they really love is that they can have a social space for patients, which can do all kinds of care, which isn't necessarily clinical care. And then we got out of the lift and came down into this room, into those vaults where you're standing, actually, and there was a drop-in class for people with Alzheimer's, just as a social cup of tea, say hello to each other. And it was like, and it wasn't, I don't think, stage managed that she'd said upstairs and we came down. So you do get a sense, because it's just a normal Friday, in November.
I'll take your question, yeah.
Oh, thank you. I was just reflecting actually as you were talking then on, you started to touch on issues around accessibility. And I was thinking about how diverse Hackney is and so many different communities living, worshipping, occupying different types of buildings. And I wonder how much you were considering issues of equity more broadly beyond accessibility and what you do to encourage diverse applications as well.
We should talk about Tower Court particularly.
Yeah, I wanted to just touch on, I didn't mention it when I was doing my part of the presentation, but in 2020, when we brought in the Heritage Award and the Sustainability Award, we actually had a category called Inclusivity in Design. And that was to encourage exactly what you're saying, schemes that, encourage accessibility for everyone. But sadly, we didn't get many nominations at all. We did give a winner. I can find that. But there was a winner, but there was just not many nominations, so it's not something that we carried forward. But perhaps it is something that we should bringing back as a category.
We talked about it a lot,
Yeah.
when we were going around. And this is a celebratory award, and so it's not about calling out bad practice, but there were schemes that were nominated that we didn't shortlist. So that's one way which we can't really particularly talk about, but they weren't reflected in that. And there was certainly something where we sort of marked stuff down slightly. We felt that might have adopted a building more powerfully, but hadn't, because some of the design was putting up some barriers. We were very alert to that and observant. But I think probably at Tower Court was where those schemes came most to the fore. I don't know.
So Tower Court is a scheme that I think was led by Hackney Development, Hackney Regeneration. The architects were Adam Cam and else
Muff do landscape.
and Muff did the landscaping. And a lot of its briefing and the outcome was about providing new housing for the Orthodox Jewish community, which included very specific detailing around lifts and these sorts of design details, actually. And they worked with a specific consultant as well who would advise, and they consulted from the community as well. But it also, I think, was a very important project in saying this isn't just for one user group. It was actually for many, and to many to live, I suppose, harmoniously in a way. That sounds very cheesy, but in a way, like very integrated. And so there was a lot of also those tricks about what's social housing and what's private housing and how do you what they call tenures and so on, as well as then this overlay of sort of and it was really, we saw it actually during festival week when the balconies had been converted as sleeping
Pictures of prayer tents. Exactly. Yeah.
So it was sort of, you really did get a sense that these things are high on the agenda. And when they're not, it's actually quite obvious.
Interesting. That's certainly with the RIBA awards as well. That's bubbling up to be a key kind of consideration. Whether there's a special. The design details were fascinating. So things like the lights not coming on automatically. From Friday sundown to Saturday. And then the lift's not working at that time. But obviously there was one lift working for people who didn't. And then about the balconies, that customers, that they must be open to the sky for prayer rituals, and so they were staggered in such a way that every single one come by another one. So stuff that we wouldn't necessarily have known to include had the client in Hackney Council not asked. And then once you know, it's really simple. It doesn't cost anything more. But if you don't know, you don't serve that community. And that was it. Client engagement with it. The question here, so
thinking about broadening your remit and having judged houses and having buildings and seeing what's good. I'm on the Clapton Area Advisory Committee, and we see a lot of less than perfect applications coming through. Is there a way in which the criteria which you're judging by possible to be taken in particular, presumably in pre-application means, to persuade clients, customers, to improve what they are submitting? I know that you don't have to follow pre-application. You can do it entirely. You can put the building up in any way you like, and just hope that the enforcement isn't particularly strong and will not go down again. But it would be nice to think that the criteria you develop for judging good buildings could be taken more widely into the planning application process, and the planning officers themselves might be proactive in hinting that certain things might be better. They wouldn't have to give a grand scheme, obviously. But it would be nice to see some pure dreadful applications.
We were just talking about this before we began, actually, and working for a government organisation. We can't ever say you should do like this because we think this is good necessarily. But being able to point to something like the Hackney Design Awards is a really great way of identifying what good looks like without seeming to show subjective preferential treatment. Very keen to do. I think it was interesting that your team was in the room for our shortlisting, as well as with us as we went around on the buses. So they had, I hope, the benefit rather than the frustration of hearing all of our debates. So I think this is kind of in the bloodstream of the Hackney Planning Department. Only be a good thing. Matt, you probably got
Well, I was just going to say
more
we
on that.
encourage pre-application on most schemes, all schemes really, because obviously that leads to a much smoother planning process. And I touched on the design review panel earlier. That's obviously for larger schemes. We've had a design review panel in place since 2006, I think. So having that sort of extra layer of scrutiny, plus our design awards, we really push for good design. So it should be something that officers are bringing forward in all their discussions.
The difficulty often is that design review is available to the bigger developments who can afford it.
Yeah. It's
And
not available to.
this is where being able to point at some of this stuff very easily and simply and without cost is hugely helpful for smaller schemes.
Yeah.
I sort of feel like a lot of it though is also that one is the nuance of the design, whatever comes forward, but it's also the nuance of the language and how do we talk about design and how do we say this is good, bad design. We sort of, I think as a jury group, we were actually trying often language that was opened the conversation and improved the conversation rather than sort of push things down. And in a way, well, I think as Anna's saying, hopefully, it raises these awards serve the purpose to raise the aspiration for design and it sort of trickle down in design. But a phrase that we used a lot was did this take advantage of the opportunity that was present? And actually, we felt like, the ones which fell a bit short of the opportunity is a really good way of saying that we think something else would be a better opportunity, would be better use of this situation.
And we often, in the planning group, we're often reverting to using the term lost opportunity. And actually, we should try not to. We should. Yes.
Yeah, but that's what it is. That's the shame of the bad design, isn't it? Because building is costly and it's environmentally harmful, and it takes it out of all of us.
It's almost as difficult.
It lost opportunities exactly. What it is.
It's almost as difficult to put up a bad building as. That's not entirely true, but it is incredibly difficult to put a building up. So make it a good building. Yeah. It's only a tiny bit more, actually, because the process is so complicated.
And you're not going to get another opportunity.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah. Ray, yes.
My question has a link to Ian's, which I hadn't quite thought of. It also might reveal my ignorance, but I wasn't here at the beginning of the talk. Do you have a visual mark, a plaque, as it were, or something on these buildings or structures to say design award? And if you do, is that an avenue of feedback or comment from the public? What a great idea.
It's a good, really good suggestion. I mean, the winners get a certificate, mounted certificate, which probably goes in their office.
An architect's office.
Could potentially go in a lobby or something like that. But something to take away.
There's certainly plaques discussion within the Hackney Society.
Absolutely, yes, we are starting our plaque scheme, but not necessarily for the design winners at the moment, because that's probably a council thing.
I was also wondering whether there was the opportunity to hold an exhibition, that's very easily accessible to the public. A museum, yeah. I mean, there must be a lot of beautiful material to present.
Yeah.
Just with a map. I did myself a little. I thought yesterday I had some fantasy that I would have a tour of all the winners, so you can quite easily do yourself a map.
I mean, we've got a good photo archive as well.
Yeah.
There could be a walking map, couldn't there?
Yeah.
That would also be good.
At Hackney Design Awards walking map.
20 years.
I'm going to write these ideas now. I'm going to forget all that.
With our partners involved.
it always, some great buildings fall down on typography. Leaves a lot to be desired. And actually those were the details we were noticing. So it would be ironic if we noticed the quality of detail and then slapped an ugly plaque on it. But Chowdhury Walk, for example, I think we noticed that all the numbers of the houses had been carved into the stone, rather than, as you often get in local authority schemes, and sort of stuck on later as a final printed horrible thing. But they were durable and they were beautiful and designed from it was, yeah, I completely agree. If you're going to do it well.
Yeah. Any more questions or comments before we close?
Lisa,
Yes.
you said that you'd that quite a lot of the buildings had come up at planning group and you've made comments. I wondered how many things had taken them on board and if that was a positive thing.
I will say that actually just the meeting last week, I put comments together on a particular scheme, and it was a grade 2 listed redevelopment. I won't mention which one, but I actually put together a lot of comments because I couldn't help myself, and I submitted them to the architect, the agent, and he came and presented the scheme to the group and had made some really valuable changes. I know that he'd also engaged with Conservation Officer about the same matters, but that worked very well. He was able to come and talk to us, and we could be constructive with those comments. It's really hard to say whether, it's rare that we would see something very specifically be changed through our comments. I think our comments are more supportive of probably the internal consultees a lot of the time, and we may be flagging stuff up that I think through the council officers we're getting their feedback to the schemes when they're during the sort of planning process. So I think that's quite helpful. I think it's less often that we have quite large developers present to the planning group, and I think it's rare that they go away going, okay, so they suggested it's 5 stories less, fine. It's sort of, it's not gonna happen. But these things, I think all this sort of challenge that are presented to projects as well from all directions, we shouldn't be shy to challenge, because they will, these things do have some effect, albeit sometimes tiny, but it's all kind of incremental. So we don't cower really. We have our say. So, and if there is anyone here who's interested in joining the planning group, we're always looking for new contributions.
Or the buildings at risk group.
Or the buildings at risk group.
Or
both. And actually, we're also trying to associate more closely with the CACs, which are the groups, the statutory consultees, who look after the various conservation areas in the borough, because we're doing a lot of the same work, although we're looking at stuff outside of the conservation areas as well. Relationship.
Ian from Clapton. I don't know if there's any other.
Kingsland, Rosemary's Kingsland,
Kingsland. All right. So if you're interested in any of those, then
there's room.
Unfortunately, we don't have an active Shoreditch CAC at the moment.
No.
So if anyone wants
to chair the Shoreditch
and wants to get involved with the Shoreditch CAC, please get in touch.
There's a lot of members. There isn't a chair,
members,
and
but
they're
there's
all
no
eager,
chair or
aren't they?
secretary. No one wants to take those roles.
Take that role, because I think Shoreditch is quite a daunting one in a way.
Well, yeah, that's where some of our biggest developments are.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Can the council help manage the group to begin with?
Probably not. I think I can help with sort of advertising for membership and things like that. But the actual running.
If you go onto the Hackney Society website, there's emails for each of the CACs. So if you're Stoke Newington, there's a Stoke Newington CAC, and you could contact. And the CACs are mostly, other than Kingsland, I think now, are mostly looking for recruits. So we'd be very interested to hear from you. On the Hackney Society website, yeah. Okay. Thank you. Have we
Lisa,
yes?
before we close and we give three
Yes.
cheers, can we do just a bit of housekeeping? And
Absolutely. Yes.
Can I do that now?
Yes, please, Ray. Ray
If I just squeeze
housekeeper.
out, folks, so everyone can see me.
There are some brochures here from 2024 as well, if anyone would like.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Ray. You probably saw me at the door. I do events for Hackney Society with numerous other people. Couple of announcements, and just to wrap up tonight, folks. Forthcoming events. We've got one each month in the next 4 months. So the next one will be March the 22nd. That's a Saturday morning. We're going to visit St Barnabas Dalston, which is a slightly misleading name, but that's their current name. It's a church which is near Shacklewell Green. It's not called St Barnabas Shacklewell. It's a turn of the 20th century church. It's a real hidden gem by definition. It's off the street, you can't see it, but it's a fantastic Byzantine stroke industrial space. We're going to get shown around by the church. That's Saturday the 22nd. 30th of April, we're going to have a panel discussion about co-housing, which I'm told is a new way of developing and designing and getting co-living accommodation built. On the 21st of May, Wednesday evening, we're going to have a walk around London Fields with Sean Gubbins, local historian and guide. That's going to be mainly focusing on the space between London Fields and Mare Street. It's very interesting industrial sites around there. And 24th of June, Tuesday evening, we have a visit and a talk about Space Studios, which was an industrial conversion some time ago as a space for the local smaller scale designers, artists and makers. So that's St Barnabas Church, co-housing, London Fields Walk and Space Studios. That's in the next 4 months. Got a question from Ian?
I was going to try and follow you up by giving another announcement.
Okay.
I'm a member of Hackney History, of the Friends of Hackney Archives, and we too are running a number of talks. One is actually tomorrow on the Rio, but I think it's sold out, or it's at the archives itself. The next one is going to be a talk on Thomas Braidwood, who was a pioneer of deaf education, and it will be a signed talk. I can't tell you the date, I'm afraid, off the top of my head. And the third one we're offering is a tour of the murals and stained glass windows of St Andrew's the Few Road, a church built in the late 19th century that has some very fine very fine wall paintings and some very fine windows. It's just had I think £2.5 million spent on it. No, I mean, anyway, it's had a lot of money spent on it by the Heritage Lottery Fund. And that's happening in June, I think, June the 28th. All this information can be found if you look on either, we have two names, Friends of Hackney Archives, but also Hackney History. So if you look on the Hackney History website, you'll find a list of the upcoming events.
Thanks, Ian. And now, are there any more notices before I do the housekeeping? Okay, so just two quick things, folks. Any latecomers that weren't met by me at the door upstairs, please see me afterwards, and I'll just get you on our list. It all helps with the stats if we have the numbers. The practice have asked me, as you all signed the record sheet to check in for fire precautions purposes, we're going to put your times on the way out. I've got the sheet here. So if you just see me on the way out and just sort of give your name, I'll put a time and then we've signed out. That's fine. And I don't know whether Lisa, as chair, you want to say, I mean, it's been a fascinating discussion and a set of talks. Absolutely excellent. And I think the questions were good too. So from Hackney Society's point of view, Hackney Society events, it's been a great evening.
Yeah,
And
I
well
think
shared.
we need to thank Matt and Owen and Hannah for their
And Lisa.
time and their expertise.